You sound phenomenal.
Wow, and you
Now that we're
sound
live.
phenomenal as well,
Like,
and we're live, and you look phenomenal as well. Let's get these tweets out, and then we will start talking about some sports and some data.
I'm
My two
tweeting
favorite
and
things.
watching. I'm watching sport behind you. I'm usually I get lost in your eyes during these things. So I'm just gonna go right to the college hoops that you have featured in the
Yeah, I
background.
figured, we got some matinee sport on. We might as well get it on the TV for the viewers. All right, where's this tweet? Where's this tweet? There it is. We are live, baby. All right, there's the tweet. Let me send this to some people in the DMs.
There you go.
All right, check.
Retweet.
What's going on, Jose? What's going on, Ashton? What's going on, Fahim, Nico? We got some people in the chat,
They're filtering in.
and we'll hit it in 3, 2, 1. What's going on, everybody? This is Short-Term High Volatility Investments. My name is Geoff Sheesby, a.k.a. the Old Man Who Bets, alongside my main man, Ant Latino. You might know him as the Odds Fellow. We're two guys that love sports and love data, and we bring you some sports betting opportunities week in and week out right here on 1:37 p.m. We're currently 19-7-1 in our NFL best bets in this podcast. We are off our first losing week. We're obviously fully transparent. 0-2 last week. We don't like it, and that's why we're calling it the bounce back. And talk to the good people. How we doing?
Revenge spot. That's what this is going to be. We are fully dedicated to bringing the winners and getting back on track. 19-7-1, still pretty good overall, but I think we got some things to correct, and that's what we're here to do, right? Losses happen. You get better.
Amen. And my loss wasn't even close, I don't think. I think it was just bad from the beginning and worse as the game went on.
Mine toyed with me. Mine was definitely an in and out type game. There was a point in the third quarter where I was rolling in every bet. Third quarter of the 4 p.m. slate, everything looked solid, and then that did not end the same way.
Yeah, I feel that. And, witching hour has been unkind these last few weeks. But, looked at a couple interesting things this week. I want to get into strength of schedule, past versus future a little bit. Just try to, kind of articulate and understand which teams perhaps are overrated or underrated versus the spread. And that is the angle that I took this week. Obviously, still going through Dave and DVOA from Football Outsider, still looking at yards per play and points per play from teamranking.com. But again, wanted to really figure out who's overrated and who's underrated, and then bet accordingly. But before we dive into that, Ant, anything else you wanted to touch upon? And there was some pretty juicy storylines, I feel like, this week.
There are some good matchups. There's some good storylines. I think right into Thursday night football, the game tomorrow night, right? When the podcast will drop Thursday morning if you guys are listening to it. So it could be a game tonight for you to target your first action of the week. I'll ask the resident Pats fan, any reaction to that rematch from the 28-3 Super Bowl comeback? We got Falcons, Panthers, Thursday night football.
Yeah, rematch of the 28-3, the best comeback in Super Bowl history, people are saying. And I wish I still had my text messages from that night where non-Patriots fans were being like, haha, suck it. And I was like, believe. And what did we do? We pulled out the W. But
I think there's a good
gambling
Twitter famous video clip. Vegas Dave out at the Super Bowl kind of touting his pick mid-game. Went horribly wrong. So
yeah, we love that. Never celebrate a win until it's a win. Obviously, a lot can go wrong, right, especially in the NFL. And I think what's so interesting in the NFL, I was having a good conversation on Sunday, is just the lack of possessions is what makes it so volatile, right? You're getting, only a few possessions per quarter. So with such a small sample size in a small sample size season, like that's why people are just experiencing these ridiculous swings. And, again, even in college basketball, there's so many more possessions. So things seem to normalize a little bit more, and you have less outrageous outliers, in my personal opinion. But no, 100%. I think it is going to be a really good game on Thursday.
Look, I think you spoke about the possessions, and it was also the Monday night game, I think, was that Jimmy G, the Niners offense under Kyle Shanahan. They really controlled the clock. Some of those possessions were very long. But I think
the
first
biggest one, dude, right?
It was like 7 or 8 minutes, right?
11 minutes and a touchdown, 93 yards, right there. I mean, obviously that's great football, and that's exactly what they wanted to do. But nonetheless, That sets up for just insane swings kind of across
And the
the
one that
board.
burned me, I was on Tampa Bay in the second half, and I thought they would come back and win that game outright. They got a little bit closer, but then after scoring to cut the game, I guess within 3 points, I think there was a 2-point conversion or a missed extra point, so it might have went to a 4-point lead instead of a 3-point lead at that point. But then the Washington football team went ahead and ripped off a 10 or 11-minute drive, capped in a touchdown. You can't come back if Tom Brady doesn't have the ball. So super interesting. I think it's a good point. You might see that trend continue in week 11.
Yeah, I agree, man. And we got some pretty good games this week, coming into even the 4:00 slate. Cowboys versus Chiefs, statement game for both. Obviously, the Cowboys are leading the NFL in both points per game and yards per play, top 4 in both rushing and passing offense. But the Chiefs, I think, are looking to bounce back here. One of those interesting things, which we'll get into in just a second, in terms of strength of schedule. The Chiefs had the 8th hardest strength of schedule coming into this week, and moving forward, they have the 19th hardest, so one of the easier ones moving forward. So does that make the Chiefs, perhaps? Obviously, you're a Cowboys fan, and I don't think this is necessarily the game to target the strength of schedule arbitrage, but it seems like one of those teams that maybe their lack of covering early is something that will then be overreacted to for maybe a strong finish to the season.
Yeah, 100%. I think they're probably a good buy low team. It's hard to say the Chiefs and buy low in the same sentence because you may get some public overreaction.
Sure.
But even the Mahomes in the MVP race was probably another place to target, right? If he does get going and he starts throwing 3, 4, 5 touchdown games per game again, and they start winning, a place I kicked myself for not jumping on them earlier 2 or 3 weeks ago, even probably heading into this past week, was the futures market for the division. I think they jumped as high as plus 200 maybe at some point, and that's when they were a couple games probably behind the Chargers or the Raiders. A lot of those teams are now completely bunched up. Casey is now sitting there in sole possession of first place with, I think, all other 3 teams in the division losing this past week. So I do think they're going to right the ship. They've gotten healthier on defense, which I think is something you're going to see translate well. And it seems like they are taking a little bit more of what the defense is willing to give them. So a little bit more dink and dump, move down the field, maybe some of those longer drives you alluded to, versus Mahomes forcing it, because teams aren't blitzing down the field.
Yeah, 100%, man. You look at the Raiders, right? They had the 27th easiest schedule through this week, the 10th moving forward. Shout out to Bo in the chat here. Through week 7, the top 5 teams in the NFL, all the NFC, were something like 30-4. Those same teams are 6-8 in the last 3 weeks. We look at the strength of schedule, past versus future. The Bills, the 32 ranked strength of schedule, easiest in the league so far. Moving forward, the 11th. The Rams, they had the 20th easiest in the league so far. Moving forward, they have the most challenging. The Colts, 30th. Moving forward, 3rd. Even the Bengals, 31 coming into this week, 13th moving forward. So it's a lot of these teams. Maybe they're good, maybe they're not. I mean, I think there are more good than bad, but still we're looking for, inflated spots to try to capitalize on misconceptions. And I think some of these big teams are going to be the areas to hit those underdogs and why they're now not covering at such a high rate.
Where shall we go next?
That is a good question. I know you've got a pick. I've got a pick. We've got 2 picks for you guys today. Let's jump in a little bit more to the strength of schedule here. I think there's, the difficulty easy and the easy to difficult are 2 areas to target. And again, looking at weak strength of schedule coming in versus tough moving forward as a team to potentially fade, and then teams that have had a tough strength of schedule so far moving into an easier strength of schedule the back half of this season as potentially an area to target. So we touched upon a lot of these, in theory, overrated or overvalued teams. That's going to be the Bills, 32 versus 11. The Rams, 20 versus 1. The Colts, 30 versus 3. Even the Steelers, 25th so far, and they haven't even looked good. They've got the 7th hardest schedule moving forward. The Raiders and the Bengals, both kind of in the same spot here, 27th versus 10th. 31st versus 13th, and the Falcons, who also have struggled mightily, 17th versus the 2nd. Anything to make of that, Ant? Are you going to use that in terms of your handicapping moving forward?
I do think it's a fair thing to look at because you have to take into account too what it does to these teams and how they might look at some of that stuff, knowing they need to go on a run or they need to hold the team off. So I think when you do realize, hey, I'm getting into that lull or that sweet spot, or if we get a win here, and then we look ahead a little bit, we can go on a bit of a run. I mean, I think that's one thing you're going to see with Seattle. a team I'm going to talk about a little bit later. And I think if they get over the hump this week and then can kind of tee up on that middle of the road strength of schedule they're going to have instead of the fourth most difficult that they've had overall, hey, does that help them mentally get on a little bit of a run here, knowing if we cash in one of these tougher games that we actually have and then finish strong down the stretch, can we get ourselves back into the playoff race?
Yeah, for sure. And another team to highlight here is actually the Panthers as well. 21st easiest strength of schedule so far, fourth hardest moving forward. So I think another team to potentially fade. I like the Washington football team plus 3.5. Actually already locked that in. That's not going to be an official podcast play, but that is posted in the Action Network. And Ant, let's look at the flip side of this real quick. Teams that have had a very challenging strength of schedule. This is, again, all according to the rankings from footballoutsider.com. And have an easy one moving forward. I think one of the most interesting ones is the 49ers, right? They have the fifth most difficult strength of schedule so far. And we saw them wake up, right? They were all also banged up. They didn't have all their running backs. They didn't have Jimmy G. They didn't have Kittle for on and off a handful of these games. They had the fifth hardest strength of schedule moving in the beginning of the season to this week. Moving forward, the 30th. So one of the easiest strength of schedules moving forward. For me, that screams, let's keep buying on them, even though they did just blow out the Rams. What do you think there?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, it's another instance of them. I think you mentioned it before. This particular first matchup that they just had, is they actually got over the hump, right? They got to win against one of those tougher teams that they faced. Do they start getting healthy and start turning it around? I think you're going to see a lot of these teams gel. I think you're going to see a lot of a mess, probably in the AFC too. But the NFC, in looking at it, there's a lot of teams bunched, 3 to 6, kind of 4 and 5 records right now. So, that stuff is going to continue to be a messy playoff situation too, as we head to a year with 7 playoff teams.
Yep, big time, man. And so a few other teams here that I'm looking to target the back half of the season because of this strength of schedule discrepancy. The Vikings, they had the 9th most challenging schedule coming into this week, 23rd moving forward. The Seahawks, the fourth most difficult, 15th moving forward. The Chiefs, 8th most difficult, 19th moving forward. The Chargers, one that I love this week at minus 5.5. The hardest ranked schedule, 31st moving forward. The Titans, second hardest, 32nd moving forward. Dolphins, 10 to 29. The Lions, 7 to 18. And the Texans, 3 to 22. And of course, there's some major concerns there just about overall lack of NFL talent on teams like the Texans and the Lions. But either way, I was seeing the Lions this week at plus 13.5 against a Browns team that might not have Chubb, might not have Baker, might not have Myles Garrett. I know they look terrible, but is there something to be said that they've played above average talent and these are still NFL players at the end of the day, and 2 touchdowns almost is potentially too much?
Look, their coaches come out and cried. They fight every week. They've lost some heartbreakers. They are coming off a tie. Does that finally get them even moving in that direction, right?
Yeah, I don't have any data on how teams perform after a tie. And it was one of the worst games I think I've ever watched, honestly. Nobody wanted to win that. That was just mediocrity.
That team is not giving up, right? No matter what,
Right.
Like you said. I think they haven't at least through the first 10 weeks of the season, and if things start lightening up, maybe that is a benefit for them. But when you look at the pure points, I don't think they need to be in the same categories with the way they've played, of a Jacksonville, of a Houston. That's where we see some of these other large spreads, even some of the Jets, right? So the way the Jets have laid down and given up points offensively the last 3 or 4 weeks. The Lions don't fit that mold. They keep finding ways to lose, but they're definitely hanging in these games a little bit more.
Yep. So I don't know if I have the gall.
The money line?
necessarily
Pull the
back
money line?
them yet. Yeah, the money line plus 438, I believe it was.
Yeah, not big enough.
Yeah, I mean, post that, and then you hit it, I'll send you a T-shirt, anybody who's listening out there. But, of course, bet responsibly. I don't know if that could ever be categorized as a responsible bet. But, anyway, that's what I'm targeting this week and moving forward, really looking at that discrepancy in terms of strength of schedule and overall output. And I think both the picks we have actually really align with that. Teams that have had tough schedules so far that are perhaps undervalued, starting with the Seattle Seahawks.
100%. So we're going to Seattle, we're going to 425, and we're going to the first pick of the week. So first time these two division rivals are matching up this season. They split the season series, both winning at home. Last year, Seattle was favored in both those games. This time you get a little bit of a different look. And I think that's largely because of how Seattle has looked this year. They've been bad lately, but I ask how bad. The record, says 1-2 while they were out, right? But they were competitive, and I think we talked about that maybe even last week. And then 0-1 now with Russell Wilson back in the mix. So they're sitting at 3-6 again on the outside looking into the NFC playoff picture. But there are a lot of teams bunched up 3-6, 4-5, and they know they have to make a run now. So do you target that Football Outsiders, strength of schedule, knowing we're jumping from 4th or 5th, I think, where they were, right? 4th?
Yeah, it goes 4th.
4th to 15th. So they go from, almost one of the hardest and the top 5 hardest to middle of the road from an NFL scheduling standpoint. So I think that helps the mental hurdle. I also just think Russell Wilson, probably came back too early. He was frankly back sooner than I anticipated. It seemed like this was a spot in a game he targeted. But to go into Lambeau and face Green Bay as your first game back, he did look a little bit rusty. The good news
Can
was
we talk about Russ for a second?
Yeah.
Was his hype video of the return perhaps the most outrageous video of all time? It looked like the man was coming back from surviving terminal cancer. He had a sprained finger.
It was like
it
a
was
bent
like the
finger,
return
yeah.
begins. It's like, okay, dude, hey, I'm one for good content. I appreciate him building his brand on all social platforms, but I just couldn't help but chuckle a little bit.
Well, we might have
to,
in the podcast recording, we might have to splice in a little bit of a Mr. Incredible, hype video, hype remark, because that whole thing in the offseason was at another level as well. So Russ is just doing Russell Wilson things.
Good stuff. Neither here nor there. If you guys haven't watched that video, go check it out.
Check it out.
Again,
and then go back and find.
I was ready to run through a wall.
Mr. Incredible, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
ready to run through a wall until I realized that he had a sprained finger.
Yeah.
Which neither.
Unlimited. There it is. Bo knows. Bo knows. So I think that defense has held up, right? They've actually played better too. They gave up 23 points in an overtime loss to Pittsburgh. They gave up 13 points in a tough loss to New Orleans, a game they covered. They gave up 7 points. Again, it was a decisive win against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Maybe nothing to write home about, but they still got the job done. And then 17 points against the Packers. But Russ threw 2 red zone picks, which is very unlike Russ. And the bend don't break defense finally, gave up a late score. I think for a while it was 7-0, right? And then, or 3-0 rather. And then it was 2 late touchdowns in the second half, kind of pushed it to that 17-0 score. Then you get the overreaction, right? And this line, lands at +2.5. And when you look at it here, I just think there's too much uncertainty on the Arizona side. I think you have an Arizona team that from a mental standpoint is trying to get healthy, trying to get right. You probably don't have Kyler for this game. Colt McCoy got banged up in their loss against the Carolina Panthers. Seems like he will play, but who knows how healthy he really is. The backup after that is one Chris Streven.
When I heard that name last week, I said, who?
Exactly. I did that when I was digging into the box score today. So he's in the mix, right? You probably might not have DeAndre Hopkins again. So if I'm Arizona sitting there in a non-must-win situation versus the kitchen sink game that Seattle's going to face, knowing our bye is coming up, I don't think they're going to risk throwing Kyler out there with the bye coming up. And I think they're going to try to go get healthy after that. I just don't think you're going to get the effort that's fully there. So the type of game script that I'm looking for is I think you get a better Russell Wilson, a more balanced attack, rushing, passing, opening things up for the running game, which is where you want to target the the Arizona Cardinals. Yeah. And that's what Carolina was able to do against them. And I think they also exposed some things in that Arizona passing game without Kyler in the mix that Seattle can continue to do. So some interesting trends here too. We might have to talk about Miss Emily's fantasy football performance. But Seattle is 7-4 against the spread during the Russell Wilson era as a home dog. So that's Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson since 2012, 7-4, good rate against the spread as a home dog. That's obviously the spot here. They're 1-1 this year, a loss against the Rams in the game that Russell got hurt, which they were actually very competitive in until he got hurt. Right. And then a cover in a loss against the Saints, 13-10. Over that same span, Seattle, after a loss, 37-12 for a 75.5% win rate. And Seattle, over that same span in the conference, so Russell Wilson's performance against conference teams and foes, 82-44-1 for a 65.1% win rate straight up. and then a 66, 57, and 4 record against the spread for a 53.7% cover rate. So I actually like Seattle kind of here outright in the kitchen sink spot. I think it's a spot over the years in the Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll era that they've performed well. And I just think it's kind of a, perfect collision of things with the spot Arizona is in heading into the bye, trying to get healthy, not necessarily needing the game, versus where Seattle comes in off that drubbing off Russell, maybe rushing back a little bit too soon. So let's go with that. Let's roll with Seattle plus 2.5 at home, maybe a sprinkle on the money line.
I like it, man. Do we have any idea if the great Fusini has taken any action on this game yet?
I believe
The
in the
hottest
text,
gambler
he seems like he's interested. He's percolating.
Okay, and you got to appreciate that. For any of you guys who are unfamiliar with the great Fusini, one, a great guy, two, on a 19-0 NFL Sunday run, if my memory serves me right. It might be 20-1, but some outrageous heater right now. The guy is seeing the board better than 20/20 vision, and as I flounder the last few weeks, he is just he's peaking right now, and hopefully that continues. So, we're
so if you see him on Arizona here, you can tail him and just leave me in the
fade
dust.
and
he's coming.
At all costs.
He's coming with.
I love it. I hope he's on the 49ers as well, because
I like this one.
He is an ultra contrarian, and he loves his dogs. So I don't know if he'll be with me on this one, but I'm looking at the 49ers here at -6.5. One of those big metrics, the 5th strongest schedule until. In coming into this week, and now the 30th easiest beginning now. And of course, the Jaguars fit right into that. So is this perhaps an obvious pick coming off of that Rams shellacking one that the great Fusini was on at 49ers first half and game for a nice 2-0 board there? But nonetheless, I don't care how public this is. I don't care how obvious this is. I think the coming out party is well-deserved. And, I think... One, it starts with health, right? They've got a healthy Jimmy, a healthy Kittle. Their stable of running backs is finally getting there. We saw Jeff Wilson Jr. get 10 carries last week, which is good. I mean, he didn't have fantastic results by any means, but it is the Rams' run defense. They had 37 rushes, I believe it was, across their top 2 running backs, and that's obviously something they love to do. But, the Jaguars' defense here is interesting because they do have a very solid rush DVOA defensively. I said good in my notes here, but in quotes, in parentheses, excuse me. Their defense is 7th in terms of rush DVOA, but their strength of schedule there is 29th. So it's like, what running backs have they really faced? I mean, Mark Ingram and a couple others that are not even worth necessarily naming. Although Ingram looked good back on the Saints, and congrats to him for passing Deuce McAllister as the Saints' all-time leading rusher. Neither here nor there. But I wanted to look... Yeah, amen. I wanted to look at teams here that had a similar offensive rush DVOA as the 49ers, and that only leads us to 3. That's the Titans at number 10, the Colts at number 5, and the 49ers are number 7. So what did the Titans do? Henry ran for 130 yards on 29 carries. Obviously a beast. What did Taylor do? 21 for 116. What are the 49ers going to do at number 7? You think it would be somewhere in between that. So I think that is super, super important. Obviously, people picking this point apart will say that the Jags played the Bills close, but the Bills are 18th in terms of offensive rush DVOA with a strength of schedule of 32. So pretty much everything that we're talking about potentially fading, the Bills are candidate number 1 for that.
Yeah, and until the Jets game most recently, really was a team that was kind of playing up and down to competition all year long.
Yeah, and they're blowing out bad teams, right? Who have the Bills faced, man? David Mills, Mike White. I mean, you name it. It's been backup quarterbacks across the board.
Hall of Famer Mike White.
Yeah, true. Yes. And it's too bad they didn't get the Jets this week for the elite Joe Flacco, but neither here nor there. But, I think at the end of the day here, man, I think this 49ers team is still a little bit underrated. I think because of that number 5 strength of schedule, is this a letdown spot in Jacksonville? I mean, for sure. But at the same time that we can capitalize, I think even with that, the 49ers, data-wise, are better than 1 score with the Jaguars. Just breaking down full DVOA here, we've got the 49ers defense at 13th, Interestingly enough, though, if we look at the Jags offense, they're 24th. That's 28th in terms of the pass, 2 for the rush. They're very good at running the ball, but important to break down that defense, number 5 against the pass, number 5 against the rush. So this defense should match up very well against the only strength of the Jaguars offense. And then this offense for the 49ers, again, deceptively good. DVA ranked number 3, pass number 5, rush number 7. So against this Jaguars defense, that's 31st against the pass, 7th against the rush, I think should be a pretty good matchup. So a little bit of a letdown spot, but I think we're buying low, even though the public's going to love them because of the strength of schedule. And that's definitely going to be a team that we're looking to continue to target throughout the rest of the season.
What helps, I think, on that letdown spot is, again, they're 4-5. They've underperformed. Right. They have to get hot the same way the 3-6 Seattle Seahawks. Like, this is a very good division. And I think you have Seattle and the Niners underperforming. You probably have Arizona overperforming, and you have the Rams where we expected, right? Maybe a little tad under at 7-3. So I think you're going to get a big push from all 4 teams in this division. And I think that helps counter a little bit of the letdown. It's like they can't let up. They have to get every win on this schedule to get back in the races.
Big time.
Good, and Jimmy G,
good stuff.
Phenomenal.
Jimmy G, the most handsome quarterback in the league.
I caught a glimpse of him on the sideline and just couldn't believe what I even uttered out of my mouth 2 weeks ago.
He'll be on the front page of the Sport Gambling Twitter.
It's true.
Edition.
It's true. Should we touch on a quick fantasy football breakdown from our wonderful producer Emily? No Context Emily, I believe, is now her nickname.
No Context Emily. Yeah, I heard she's got Russell Wilson on the team, so she
does.
He's
going to be cooking this next Sunday. He's going to get going. Also, Saquon Barkley, David Montgomery in the running back spot. So it's been a tough go, I guess, with Saquon, not being in the mix. I don't know how she's been, performing, who she's subbed out for Mr. Barkley, but maybe he gets back on the field. I don't know.
Yeah, major red flags there. Obviously, you guys can't see this. She's number 2 in the league, but she's starting at Calvin Ridley, who's out for mental health reasons indefinitely, as well as a kicker who's out, I think, for at least a few more weeks. So,
Mr. Zerline,
let's update that roster and get some active players on.
Love the DJ Moore pick, though, sitting in the flex spot. DJ Moore, a great wide receiver. Good sneaky late round out.
Cam back on the mix. Do you think Cam gets the start this week?
I don't, but I think he'll get in the mix. Although maybe, I guess, I don't know. What do you think? I've done zero research on it. I wouldn't start him if I was them, but they probably will. Let's check it out.
He's definitely a better QB. Anyway, I saw you listed a bonus pick here. You want to toss that out for good luck?
I'll do two. I'm feeling generous today. I think bonus picks leans. Follow me on Twitter, and I'll try and get these official. But right now, heavy lean to the Baltimore Chicago Bears under. Okay. I think you're going to get a messy game in Chicago. I think you get an angry Baltimore defense coming off a loss. And when you really dig into some of the numbers here, I mean, both of these teams want to lean on the rushing attack. When you look at them offensively from a DVOA standpoint, Baltimore's third rushing offense versus 16th in the passing game. Chicago 14th, right, middle of the pack versus 29th in the passing game. But even Justin Fields hasn't proved to be a great ready passer yet. I think he's a very good quarterback and growing with time. Couple trends. Unders 3-1 in Chicago's home games this year. Under also 3-1 in Baltimore Ravens away games this year.
Interesting.
The under is 3-2 after a Bears loss, and the under is 3-1 after Ravens losses. Again, records those years. So you have both teams coming off a loss. This way, I think both are going to try to establish that running game. Might be first half under, full game under. I'm going to toy with it and dig into some of the numbers a little bit more. But one final telling fun stat. Again, so many different angles to look at these games. So we'd like to share this stuff with you guys so you can think about it too. When Chicago faces a strong pass rush team, which they've done a few times, M's a fifth, not second, M gets a fifth. So they've faced Cleveland, who was second in pass rush win rate, Tampa Bay, who was fifth, the Rams, who were first, and now they face Baltimore, that is sixth. So those are top 6 they will have faced 4 out of the top 6. Cleveland, they scored 6 points. Tampa Bay, they scored 3 points. And the Rams, they scored 14 points. So I don't think you're going to get a ton against this Baltimore defense, especially coming off a loss out of Chicago.
I certainly hope not, at least.
So it's just a matter of what you maybe what Lamar and the Ravens offense does getting back on track. So the number's a little bit low. I think it's sitting around 45 or 45.5. So
yeah, but
check that
don't
one
look out for Allen Robinson, who had his coming out party.
Yeah,
He had that
stud.
39-yard catch. Mooney's looking pretty good. I don't know. Are they percolating in? I hope not for your bet's sake, but that's why we play the game, right? That's why we get our bets in.
Yeah. And I'll give you one more NBA sprinkle for tonight.
Yeah, I saw somebody asking about the NBA in the chat as well.
I think the Nets coming off that Golden State shellacking will have a better effort against Cleveland tonight. Could be a place to target team total, first quarter, first half, something come out hot. Cleveland has been very good in the first half of games, but they are now without their stud rookie center, point forward, whatever the hell you want to call him, positionless basketball these days. But Evan Mobley has been an absolute beast, and he's out 2 to 4 weeks. They're a little bit banged up. I think Colin Sexton's out. So I just think it's a bad spot for Cleveland with some of those injuries, and a good spot for the Nets coming off a pathetic performance against the Warriors last night.
Okay, I like it, man. All right, well, that's a wrap for us today, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, one last plug. You see this mustache on my face growing out for an organization called Movember. Movember is an organization dedicated to keeping men alive through mental health and suicide prevention, prostate and testicular cancer awareness, and early testing. Because, quite frankly, men are dying too young. On average, us men die by suicide 3.5x higher than our women allies. Men, on average, die 6 years younger than women for largely preventable reasons. Alcohol stats are not particularly favorable. Men die at 2x higher in terms of alcohol-related deaths. 75% of all alcohol-related disorders are also from us men. So, we're trying to raise some money. We're trying to make some difference and keep our homies alive. So we're looking to raise $10,000. We're over $7,000 already through, 17 days. So we're tracking very, very well. Every $5, every dollar, every conversation really helps. We'll drop some links on our Twitter page if you want to get involved. And Ant and I are both also dedicated to or committing to movement this week because of the links between physical and mental health. I believe we're both committed to 60 miles.
Correct.
And 60 miles is representing the once a minute stat. Every 60 seconds, a man dies by suicide globally. So trying to move for us and move for those who can't and have gone too soon before us. So we appreciate you listening. We appreciate you having conversations with the men in your life to make sure they're okay, because oftentimes, with toxic masculinity, being strong, keeping a smile on your face is the default and is what is expected. And behind the curtains is perhaps a little bit more of a stormy story at the end of the day. So check in with your homies, talk with your parents, talk with anybody. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. We're always available, and we appreciate all the support. But that's it for us today. 2 picks, 3 if you include Ant's bonus pick, which we hope will hit. We'll call it 3 official podcast plays for the record. We'll update you next week. This will be, and this always is short-term high volatility investments. My name is Geoff